Hi guys, in this week's video I'll be doing a bit of a follow-up on the Coloursoft review video I made a few weeks back, and you don't need to have watched that video to understand this one, although it may provide some helpful background information, so I'll leave a link to it in the cards in the top right and in the description box down below. Additionally, I'll be giving a bit of an overview about how I blend coloured pencils together in general, and some tips and tricks as well. But before we start, I want to re-announce the winner of the giveaway. Congratulations to Keisa Campbell. Follow the directions in the description box down below as soon as possible to claim your prize. Again, only one of the two prizes has been claimed so far, and I'll be redrawing a winner every week until it's been taken, so if you entered, make sure to keep an eye peeled as you may still have a chance of winning if this week's winner doesn't claim their prize. Anyway, back on topic. So a few weeks back I did a review on the Derwent Coloursoft pencils. After some materials testing, I found that these pencils were most effective on Clairefontaine pastel matte paper, and I chose not to complete my demonstration on the two other types of paper that I swatched the product out on. In fairness, I find that for the way that I work, pastel matte works best for all coloured pencils, and I often use this paper for my artwork and for my reviews. The micro abrasive surface helps to finely break up and disperse the pencil pigments out onto the paper, which as a result means that they blend easier, especially with liquid solvents. Additionally, because of the textured surface, you can often achieve more layers than you would otherwise be able to on a smooth surface. However, the results that I produced in the demo went against what a lot of people had experienced for themselves with the Coloursoft, specifically how easy it was to blend and achieve smooth layers. It seems like Coloursoft just doesn't perform nearly as well on smooth paper as they do on something with a bit of tooth, and although many pencils have a slight difference of performance between paper types, it seemed like the difference for the Coloursoft was staggering. People had commented on my review video that they wanted to see the pencils perform on paper that wasn't pastel matte, or a smoother paper in general. So today I'm drawing on the reverse side of Canson Mi Teintes, which is one of the papers that I tested and swatched these pencils on in the review video. This paper is not super smooth, certainly not like bristleboard or hot pressed watercolour paper. The Canson Mi Teintes has a fine grain to it which I really like. It grips the pencil pigments well without having a texture that is difficult to cover over. I almost never use the front side of this paper. The paper is primarily designed for pastels, and the front has a fairly pronounced honeycomb-like texture, which I find difficult to work over and flatten out with coloured pencils. This paper is also widely available and a lot more affordable than the pastel matte, and upon reflection, this is what I decided was the largest issue with using pastel matte in my Coloursoft review video. If you're buying a set of pencils, you certainly don't want to be limited to using an expensive paper in order to get a good result and employ the techniques you want. So the fact that this paper isn't incredibly smooth either is kind of irrelevant. The simple truth is that not all products are going to perform as well on certain surfaces. Paper choice plays an important role in what effects and results you can achieve. The Coloursoft pencils perform best on the pastel matte for me and for the techniques that I employ, but that isn't to say that they are unusable or bad on other papers. And the Coloursoft pencils work and blend perfectly well here, I think, and I'm also pretty impressed with how opaque and pigmented they are on this paper too. You can layer light over dark no problem, which is something I really like to do to get the little details and highlights in. I'm using Zest-It pencil blend here as my liquid solvents, which is a product that I really like. I used to use paint thinners or odourless mineral spirits, and I found the smell nauseating, and they weren't exactly what I'd call odourless, and they had a sharp solventy smell to them. But the Zest-It products are made from orange turpentines, which has a pleasant aroma if you like oranges. It smells exactly like orange peel. But I think you can also get these products where the orange scent has been removed, but I haven't tried them personally. Now, you don't need to use liquid solvents to get a smooth blend with coloured pencils, but I find that it makes the process a lot easier and quicker. By dissolving the pigments, you're able to move them around with a brush and push the pigments into all of the little nooks and crannies of the paper surface. I'd also recommend using liquid solvents for the Coloursoft pencils in particular, not only because you can get beautifully rich washes of colour using this method, but also because one of the drawbacks of Coloursoft is just how waxy they are, and that you'll be limited to the amount of layers you can create with them. As I mentioned, solvents dissolve pigments, making them spread smoothly around the paper, and to get a similarly smooth layer without solvents, you'll likely have to burnish. In addition to this, I find that solvents help to remove some of the waxy build-up that can make further layering difficult or impossible, so removing this means extra opportunity to create even more layers. I use a soft synthetic filbert brush to blend with, and I have a couple of different sizes that I use. A filbert brush is just a flat brush with a curved tip, and these are well suited for blending. These brushes really aren't anything special. In fact, I think the cheaper the better, as over time the bristles will get damaged, especially if you work on abrasive paper such as pastel matte. I bought my brushes from the budget homeware store Søstrene Grene, and I can't remember exactly what I paid for them, but it was certainly under £1 or $1 for each brush. So I have a small amount of the Zest-It solvents in an old jam jar, which I can then easily open and close to prevent the solvents from evaporating. So when I need to blend something out, I open the lid, I load the brush with the solvents, and I'll squeeze out the excess by putting the brush up the inside of the jar, or by dabbing it on a rag or kitchen paper if the brush is dirty from before. I'll then apply the solvents to the area I want to blend out, and often I'll saturate the area a little first to loosen up the pigments, and then I'll use small circular motions with the brush to move the pigments around the paper surface. But sometimes I won't use circular motions, and I'll instead follow the direction of the fur and feathers in order to leave some subtle streaks that help describe the texture of the fur or feathers. If the paper is very absorbent, you might find that you'll need to apply more solvents to the page, and here Canson Mi Teintes is quite absorbent, and I did have to apply a fair amount and work the brush a lot in order to spread the pigments out evenly. Remember that colours can appear different when they're wet on the paper, and I especially find that white pigment, or colours that contain white pigment, can become almost transparent. As such, colours will often appear darker on the paper until they're dry. In order to get the pencils to blend and dissolve well, I recommend working in light layers using a light hand and a very sharp pencil. This will help to more finely disperse the pigments on the paper surface and avoid thick, hard lines which can be really difficult to dissolve and cover over. It's also important to make sure that you have enough pigment on the paper, as you'll find it very difficult to blend out if there's not enough pigment on there. I also really like to work dry pencil into areas on the paper that are still wet with solvents, as I can then intensely deposit pigment this way. I find that this is particularly effective with white pencils, as you can draw in bright highlights and then with a relatively dry brush, soften them out and blend them into the colour below straight away. As you may know, I only have a set of 12 Coloursoft pencils to use for this piece, so careful planning and blending was necessary to achieve the colours that I was after. For instance, in order to get some of the grey tones on this bird's face, I put down a light layer of white first and added in tiny amounts of indigo and dark brown. I then blended these out with a clean brush and went over the area with even more white to add in some of the feather texture. The limited palette also meant that I had to layer and rework areas more than I would usually have to if I had a larger selection of colours, as it takes more layering and adjusting to reach the desired colour for each section. When drawing the branch that the bird's sitting on, I ended up really saturating the paper with the Zest-It pencil blend because I wasn't careful with my application of colour. In retrospect, I should have taken a lot more time colouring the branch in using small circular motions with a very sharp pencil, and that would have meant that I would have needed much less solvent in order to blend everything out. It took days for the Zest-It to dry in this area because Canson Mi Teintes is pretty absorbent, and soon when I show the finished piece at the end, you'll be able to see that there's still a faint mark where I applied the solvents. In time though, this should fade and disappear entirely, and I have let it hang up to dry somewhere where air could circulate around it, after realising that it would probably dry faster if it wasn't taped down to the plastic cover on my desk. But if you don't soak the paper with solvents, or if you work on a paper that is less absorbent, the solvents should totally dry fairly quickly, maybe taking a few hours at the most. However, an area soaked with solvents is usually workable only for a few minutes before the area needs to be topped up with more. So here's the finished piece. Although it was a quick little drawing, I hope that it shows that the Coloursoft pencils blend just fine on a more normal type of paper. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please leave it a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date with my future arty videos. Thank you very much for watching, hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you in the next video.